So nowadays the Scotch whisky regions probably mean less than they ever have done in terms of identity. You've got peated whisky coming from the Highlands and elsewhere, and you've got non-peated whisky coming from Islay, once the home of peated whisky, still is the home of peated whisky. But Campbeltown has retained this incredible identity, and today we're going to take a look at one of their 3 operational distilleries. So, welcome back to the Whisky Loft. Come on in, you're more than welcome. Renovations are underway here in the loft. We're going to get some showcasing in the background, as is customary for all my bottles. So that's coming. Stay tuned for that. Very exciting indeed. But today we're going to look at one distillery in particular, and we're going to take a look at Glen Scotia. So Campbeltown was once the centre of Scotch whisky production. There were tens of operational distilleries there, and they had their own fuel supply, their own coal mining facilities. It was incredible farmland all around there for growing barley. They had great shipping links and train links, and it was only over the water to Ireland. It was a really, really useful place to be. Not far to Glasgow either, by ship. So it was a really convenient, fantastic place to set up the whisky industry. But the Great Depression, the closure of the coal mine there in Campbeltown, and prohibition in the United States really drove Campbeltown to its knees. And nowadays there are only 3 operational distilleries there. One of those distilleries is Glen Scotia. I would like to take a deeper dive into Campbeltown at some point because it's a really fascinating area and really out on a limb, to put it politely, just coming off the mainland of Scotland. So Glen Scotia itself was known as the Scotia Distillery, and it was founded in 1832. It closed in 1930 and then reopened in 1933, a very, very familiar story for all sorts of distilleries all over Scotland. And by that point it became the Glen Scotia Distillery. It then closed again in 1984 during the famous whiskies period in Scotland, where there was an excess of whisky and it just couldn't be sold. And then it reopened again in 1989. So familiar story of openings and closures and purchases and buyers and all sorts of things like that. Finally, in 2014, the distillery was bought by the Loch Lomond Group, who own it to this day and run it in conjunction with the Loch Lomond Distillery, quite a bit further over to the east in the Loch Lomond National Park. It is said that the distillery is haunted by a former proprietor who drowned himself in Campbeltown Loch after being cheated out of £40,000 in a dodgy business deal. I'm sure £40,000 in those days was a pretty hefty sum, so I imagine he's haunting the distillery trying to claw some of that back. So Glen Scotia is one of those distilleries that weathered a very severe storm in Campbeltown, but after the Scotch whisky industry there was decimated, it really has clung on, and it is now suddenly picking up speed and picking up momentum and really gaining a reputation for itself. All of a sudden it's garnering awards. It's been named Scottish Whisky Distillery of the Year twice at the Scottish Whisky Awards, and then it won Best in Show at the San Francisco Spirits Competition for its 25-year-old expression. Sadly, I don't have a bottle of that on hand. The original mash tun, still house and dunnage warehouse are all still in use today, which I like. There's a little bit of heritage there which really speaks to the romantic side of me. And the 2 stills at Glen Scotia are left unpolished, which apparently helps to keep them cool and not get too hot. They also have horizontal line arms coming out of the still, and this helps balance between an upward sloping pipe that gives you a lot of reflux and a downward sloping pipe which gives you a lot of heavy spirit. The result is apparently something in between, which gives you a nice smooth spirit. Now I'm lucky enough here to have a sample of new make spirit from Glen Scotia, which as you can see is completely clear, as all whisky is when it comes off the stills. And so I can test the theory of whether this is a nice smooth spirit as it comes off the stills. I haven't had any whisky in a little while because I've not been too well, so hopefully I should get a bombardment of flavour, one hopes anyway. I must thank Uncle Phil for getting this for me, my friend Uncle Phil. He went up to the Glen Scotia Distillery and brought some back for me, so thank you very much, Phil. Appreciate it. So what you get off spirit, off new make spirit, is it really doesn't taste like whiskey. It's something more akin to vodka, but it does have these kind of whiskey back notes. Usually it's quite grainy, and this smells like that. It's got this kind of very kind of grainy flour, like almost like flour kind of smell to it, if you can imagine what flour smells like. But there's a sweet note there as well, and that's the note that you kind of recognise and can lift out from a more mature whiskey. Usually with under matured whiskey, I smell a lot of banana once it's been in the cask. Maybe not under matured, but young spirit certainly. And I'm not getting a huge amount of banana off this, so I'll try. Oh, it's hot. It's really hot. It is quite hot. Maybe this is because I haven't had a whiskey in a while, but it's not unpleasant actually. It is quite sweet, and it leaves this kind of very sweet note around your tongue. I don't have an awful lot of new make to compare it to. I've not drunk lots of the stuff, but it's quite sweet, and there's a very definite menthol note on the finish that kind of comes through right at the end. So now the distillery is under the stewardship of Ian McAllister. He holds the position of Master Distiller, and Michael Henry, who holds the position of Master Blender, I believe, for the entire Loch Lomond group. So here I've got some of their expressions. I've got here the double cask, which is sort of their entry level expression, and it's very, very pleasant for a very affordable price. I'm trying to think how much I paid for this. It was certainly around the £40 mark, just a little bit under, and it's very, very pleasant. It's very nice. It says rich and spicy and on the bottle, which I think is by and large pretty true, and it's finished in sherry casks as well. You're getting a lot of fruit, a lot of orange peel, and then this sort of burnt note there as well, the kind of char perhaps from the barrel, and a caramelly note too. It's a very inoffensive single malt whiskey, but when I first tried it, I thought it was fine, and I did a tasting of all of these together on my own and wrote some notes, and then I came back and I did get that banana-y note that I was talking about. I also get a little bit of the menthol that I'm picking up off the new make as well. So if you're trying to introduce someone to Glen Scotia, I think it's a really, really good place to start. What I would say about it is that it is 46%, which is really, really good. It's a little bit higher ABV. It's non-chill filtered as well, but there is allegedly colour added to this, so that's why you get this kind of dark caramel colour, I presume, from what is probably quite a young whiskey. But for a young whiskey, very good. And for under £40, not too bad in terms of value. So the second one we're going to look at is this, the 15-year-old. And it's quite hard to get hold of. It is around, but it comes and goes in terms of availability. And this is one that I will like quite a lot. So I've poured myself a glass of it on that basis. Again, non-chill filtered, 46%. I can't find much information about the colour, so I do believe that colour has been added. Let's see if there's anything on the box about colour. There is not. So we have to kind of assume that colour has been added. I haven't made a note about it. I would have looked it up. So what you get from this is you get that very strong vanilla note on the nose that comes from the casks, from the charred casks and the charred oak. It's very pleasant on the nose, very rich. You get a lot of fruit there as well. You get quite a lot of maybe overripe fruit, perhaps. And when you try, there is a sweetness to it, but you get a lot of that. You get a lot of oak. It's very oaky. It's very oak driven, very cask driven, I think. I quite like that kind of oak spicy note that you get from a lot of wood in whiskey, and you're certainly getting that here. A lot of that spice. When you add water, you open it up and there's this slight kind of boiled sweets note, so that fruitiness and that sweetness kind of come together. So the next one we're going to look at is this one, which is the Glen Scotia. This was the Campbeltown Festival edition that they brought out earlier this year. It is an 8-year-old. It is peated and finished in a PX cask. And this was one of my absolute favourites from last year. Really, really enjoyed this. It tastes much older than 8 years old, or a little bit older than 8 years old. And it's full of, you really get that heavy sherry flavour from it as well as the peat, and sherry and peat is a beautiful combination. So with this one you're getting sort of milk chocolate notes and that slight peatiness that comes through. You're getting obviously dried fruits from the sherry, and you're getting some, when you add water to it, you get some citrusy or stone fruit notes as well. So it's a really, really nice dram, and if you can find it, I really, really recommend picking up a bottle. This is the first bottle I've owned, but I was drinking it quite a lot down my local pub because I knew I wouldn't be able to find it very easily. And then the final bottle that I've got here to show you is this, the Victoriana. Now this is the 2021 bottling, I think from November 2021. So this one is a little older than the new, and it hasn't got the new branding on it either. But it's a very special bottle because it just won the Online Scotch Whisky Awards Whisky of the Year, and it is a very nice dram indeed. So I'm not going to say any more because I'm going to review this one properly in my next video, but it's very, very nice, natural colour, non-chill filtered, and it comes in at cask strength, 54.2%. One thing that I think connects all of these bottles together is that they're very cask driven. You really get that oak spiciness from them. They're not really heavily driven by bourbon or sherry, and none of that really comes across in any of these expressions. You really get that char and that resin, and it's quite earthy. It's quite an acquired taste, I would say. Do I get Campbeltown funk, the famous Campbeltown funk, off any of them? No, I don't think I do. But I don't really 100% know what the Campbeltown funk means. It seems to mean something different for everybody. So, Glen Scotia, I would highly recommend giving them a go and giving them a try. If I was going to pick a favourite out of these, I think for uniqueness, this Campbeltown Festival one is a very, very good dram and very interesting. But you're unlikely to be able to find it too easily now. The 15-year-old is very, very nice indeed. But, as we'll find out, the Glen Scotia Victoriana is a very, very special bottle of whiskey. So I recommend you come back and hear my views on that one. Please, if you can, give me a thumbs up at the bottom. I really, really appreciate it. And do subscribe if you like what you're seeing. As you know, these are early days, so I'm still kind of building up the confidence to talk to camera and talk to you lot out there. I really love reading your comments and appreciate any of your views, provided they are constructive. So I'll join you back in the loft again soon, where we'll be drinking some Victoriana, and I look forward to seeing you then. Cheers, Slanch of Art. Slanch.